that's like what I was talking about earlier, where if you jump without moving a little bit first, you will plummet because you do not have any forward momentum. So that was my bad. That was not on the game for once. In terms of like, it didn't even input or anything, I just didn't move fast enough to the side. We actually did see the spike wall briefly. Hopefully that will be the first and last time we see it. If we move fast enough, it won't be a problem. I realized that this is definitely one of the scenarios where the speed increase for Christopher helps a lot. Because the slight boost in movement speed means you probably won't have to worry about the spike wall, like hardly at all, making this a lot less stressful of a stage. I actually don't know if the mod increases the climbing speed. I almost did it again. Let's try this. Yeah, that feels very scary, having to like move slightly to the left as you're jumping. Again, this jump isn't even that difficult to make, but it just feels a lot tougher because of Castlevania physics. I do miss like the 3D, not the 3D, the Metroidvania style Castlevanias where you actually have like better jumping. It's definitely difficult going from something like Symphony, which was my first Castlevania, to like the old school games where you don't have like full air control. It's definitely a challenge. But with that, we've made it to yet another boss fight, and luckily for us, after that very difficult stage, we actually have a pretty easy boss fight. So they'll fly around and then dive at us. Eventually they'll land, but we can attack them as they're diving. So yeah, when they land, try to deal as much damage as you can, and overall this isn't too bad. And with that, we've made it to the final stage. Yes, there are only 4 stages in this game. It's very, very easy. Or maybe not easy, it's a very short game, that's what I should be saying. It's definitely not easy by any stretch. Again, playing it with these like small improvements definitely makes it a lot more manageable. Not to say that it's easy, we might still get a game over because this final stage is actually kind of brutal, both for enemies and obstacles. This part here actually reminds me a lot of like the palaces from like Zelda 2, actually. Barely defeated that enemy before they got a chance to attack, which was very lucky. Now we have the first boss again, now as a regular enemy, which is kind of cool. I like when games do that, when they bring back like a boss as like a regular enemy. I should have kept climbing, if I'm being honest. Hesitating definitely was my downfall there. Yeah, these enemies in this hallway, I do not know how to deal with them without the whip upgraded to max, because without the projectiles, I just don't know how you can actually get over to them fast enough to avoid taking damage. So yeah, we took a fair amount of damage there, but it's fine. Now we have more to deal with in this hallway. Got through that one no problem, thankfully. I want to say this one is actually set up in such a way that's very difficult to get, or to take damage. So let's try to time this properly, like so, to get a few more like items, like a health restore, and we're back to the fully powered up vampire killer. It would have been funny in the original if I had just gotten the upgrade and then immediately lost it, which is what would have happened there. Another falling platform we have to carefully jump across, and now we're good to go. And now we have a very annoying section. We have to time like 2 very precise jumps to avoid hitting the ceiling here. And that's why I don't like that jump. It is very precise. But it's fine, all we have to do is go through this again. Like in other Castlevania games, you do have checkpoints, but if you lose all your lives, you do have to restart the stage. If for whatever reason we get a game over, I'll skip ahead to where we inevitably get a game over and continue from there. To tell the truth, we actually haven't lost as many lives as I would have expected, but I do fully expect that we might lose a few more by the time we get to the end, because again, this stage is not easy, but these jumps here are actually some of the worst parts because of like having enough clearance to make it to the ledge, but not clipping the spikes. So let's try this again. There we go, much better. But obviously we're not done yet. We now have a similar problem here with more spikes. So let's carefully make our way through here, avoiding the ceiling again. There we go. I almost didn't grab the chain though, which would have been unfortunate. Of course, we're not done yet. We have another section like the last one, but at least we're getting used to how this controls a little bit better. So that makes it a little bit easier. Not to say it's easy by any means, but as you get used to like the game, it does feel like it gets a little bit easier. I almost feel like that's kind of how older Castlevania games work, where you have to like build up muscle memory, which is kind of like fun in a way, but it definitely gets a little bit frustrating after a while. Like, I like older Castlevania games, but I definitely get frustrated by them a lot. I've talked about it extensively, but my favorite classic Castlevania is Rondo. And that's partly because you can play as another character that isn't a Belmont and actually has like air control. This is a very unfortunate situation that we've ended up in. At least we start here, so it's not too bad. But yeah, without the projectiles, that's very annoying. My best advice would be to probably just make your way through the room as quickly as possible and not let that enemy attack. So yeah, let's carefully try to jump across quickly-ish and carefully, and there we go. Much better. Again, this game is not easy, even with some mods to make it a little bit less challenging. I say as I might die again here from this enemy. Barely got through that in one piece, so let's climb up and see what terror awaits us next. We now have these like moving spikes. On the Game Boy Color version, they're actually colored slightly differently, so you can actually tell them apart from the hazard spikes, which is actually kind of convenient. But I only have one hit point. Hey, guess who has to do all that over again? As I was saying, I only had one hit point, so I had a feeling I was going to clip a spike there. I'm actually amazed I got through the first one in one piece. Oddly enough, those spikes do not instant kill you. It's only the ones that are like non-moving, which is an interesting choice, to be honest. Again, going fast here actually seems to be the trick, to basically not let a bunch of fireballs like clutter up the screen. Again, if you have projectiles, that's a much easier room to get through. Without, it's definitely kind of a pain. Let's try to not take as much damage this time, so we have a little bit more breathing room for the next area. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit tricky. Also, timing this with slowdown feels a little bit scary, and also trying to jump forward without actually clipping the spikes on the wall. We're back down to like no health, so we might be in trouble again. But let's try this out. So I'm going to make my way back to that room, and we'll continue from there. Alright, let's try this again, and hopefully we won't take too much damage. Honestly, I'm not worried about damage itself, I'm more concerned about knockback, because this is a Castlevania game, so getting hit by one of the moving spikes might be enough to push us into the instant death spikes. Alright, so we made it through there, so next up we have another one of the night enemies that was the boss of stage 1. I do feel like they're a little bit easier to defeat now, which makes sense now that they're regular enemies instead of a boss. Also, there are more of them here, so instead of like one really difficult one for the, or not really even difficult, one tougher one as a boss, we have like several slightly weaker ones. We also have a ton of health pickups here, which, if you ask me, is actually surprisingly generous for this game. With how unfair some of the level design is, I'm actually amazed they give you this much health. There's actually even more pickups on this ledge, and with that, we should be ready for the final boss. All that's left is our showdown with Dracula. So this fight is actually kind of straightforward, but surprisingly difficult at the same time. So he teleports across the room, launching these projectiles in an X pattern and a T pattern alternating. The trickiest part is actually figuring out where you can deal damage without taking damage yourself. I'm actually taking my time. I would like to get through this fight with as much health as possible for reasons that you might know if you are familiar with the series. That was a whiff, unfortunately, so we might have to wait another cycle. And of course, there is a phase 2. We now have to fight Dracula in his bat form. So he'll fly across the room, and occasionally unleash these smaller bats to attack us. The worst part, again, is knockback, which is a pattern in Castlevania games, it seems. Overall, this isn't overly difficult other than the smaller bats, if you ask me, and occasionally, like, trying to line up attacks as he's flying quickly across the room and avoiding taking damage yourself. And with that, we've reached the end of Castlevania The Adventure. Overall, this wasn't too bad, partly because I used a modded version to correct some of the issues that fans have with the original release. The game is currently available on the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, along with its sequel, Castlevania II Belmont's Revenge. I don't know if I can recommend playing the original, like unmodded, because of some of the limitations that make it more challenging than even some of the other Castlevania games. If you did have to worry about losing upgrades from simply taking any damage, that would definitely make this game a lot tougher, because we took a ton of damage. Also, as usual, after beating the game once, you can actually play through the stages again with a higher difficulty. Basically, the enemy's damage will be increased, which does not sound exactly super fun as someone who struggles with the game even when modded and on the default difficulty, so I will opt out of doing that. But with that being said, that is the end of this adventure, so thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for something different.